started. Can
Sure.
we start off a little bit with you telling me, giving you like a 2-minute overview of your experience as a business analyst?
Sure. So I've been consulting as a BA, and some of the key skills I've been doing is the first thing I do whenever I start up a project is make myself familiar with the scope of the project, understanding the high-level requirements. Also make myself familiar with the as-is business processes, the business jargons. If there are any existing systems, I like to make myself familiar with the with the way how it currently works, and then start the brainstorming sessions with the business, helping identify business rules, functional requirements, UI requirements, and then whatever route we take, whether creating a functional requirements document or a use case approach, or if it's agile, writing user stories, and support them with UML diagrams like use case diagrams, activity diagrams, support them with wireframes, UI specification. Also, I've been working closely with the QA team if needed to help them write test cases, conduct manual testing, conduct bug triages between testers and the developers, coordinating the user acceptance testing, and also writing release notes. So that's primarily what I've been doing. Is this what you were expecting, or you wanted me to talk about something specific?
No, that's great. That's perfect. We're just going to probably expand on some more of the things that you brought up in your overview, so we can kind of assess your skills. But so far,
sure.
Definitely the experience we're looking for. Let's see. So you mentioned Agile. Let's touch on that first. So you're familiar with the Agile methodology?
Yes, I am familiar with Agile, and I believe I won't say I'm a Superman or a pro, but I have a pretty good grasp at it.
Okay. So you've worked on projects. Are you currently working on a project that's
correct.
Agile? Okay.
Uh-huh.
How long are your typical sprints?
So a sprint in this case is a week sprint. I've also worked prior where there were 2-week sprint. So we have a monthly release, and there are 4 sprints in a release.
Okay. All right. Now, I guess with 1 to 2 week sprints there, how do you go about documenting your requirements in that short period of time?
So the way I work, Joanne, is I typically work probably a release cycle ahead of time. Okay. So it's not that I'll have the features. I'll end up writing user stories right before the beginning of the sprint. My goal is to have a good list of or a good inventory of ready-to-code user stories that the developers can pick up on. Because many times what happens is when I do a sprint planning meeting with them, sometimes I feel a user story which is ready from my end may lack some details at times. I'm human.
Right.
And then I have to discard that user story because it's not ready to code because I missed out on certain details. So then I always ensure that I have a couple of other user stories or more than a couple for them to pick up on so that they don't remain idle. So I always like to work, probably a good idea is about 3 to 4 sprints ahead of cycle so that I manage a good inventory of user stories.
Now, have you also functioned as the product owner or
correct.
PA?
Correct. As a product owner. I mean, do you think if I can give you more like a 2-minute overview of my experience on Agile will give you a better understanding of my experience?
No, we're good. I'm just going to ask some questions. That's good.
Okay, cool.
We function in an agile environment, so I was just making sure that you have experience with that. It wouldn't be a showstopper if you didn't, because in my opinion, agile's it's easy to pick up and learn how to function. Everything functions differently.
And from a BA perspective, I'm in so much in love with Agile because it makes my life so easy when it comes to documentation, because I don't have to manage the 200-page requirement document and keep a track of what's changing and what not. So.
Right. So in your in working in Agile, do you guys work with any kinds of requirements tool or simply? Go ahead.
Nope. I mean, currently using Rally for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Initially, it all started with an Excel spreadsheet. Even the backlog would be in an Excel spreadsheet. And later we thought we need to have a more civilized approach. and then hence we migrated to Rally.
Okay. We are
I've also
using. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm also a little bit familiar with Jira. I've not used it on any of my projects, but I'm a little bit nerd when it comes to some new tools. So I just like a trial version of it and just play with it. So I've not used it in a work environment. Just have an overview of what it is.
Okay. Yeah, we're currently in our Scrum teams using TFS is what we're utilizing, just for tracking user stories and stuff. We don't have a requirements tool that we're using, but we are in the process of evaluating that. So I'm hoping this fiscal year we might get a requirements tool to use for our requirements. So,
okay.
All right. So back, can you explain like the difference between what a use case is and a user story?
Sure. So a use case is more like it's a description of a functionality from an end user perspective. So it would have use cases are more in terms of scenarios. So it would have a use case name, it'll have a use case number, it'll identify who the actor is, it'll have a use case story, it'll have a trigger to the use case, it'll have a precondition, a postcondition, and then comes the three flows, three different kind of flows. The primary flow, which is a happy day scenario, which defines the best way of completing the functionality. Alternate scenarios, so any scenarios other than primary flow via which the functionality can be completed, and an exception scenario, which includes failure scenarios where it's a hard stop and the use case is not completed. On the other hand, a user story is more like a tool used in agile development, which again describes a feature from an end user perspective, but it describes in the format, it's a different format, wherein they say as a. So again, we are identifying the actor, the role of the user. So you're defining what the goal is, and then so it defines the business benefit of achieving that enhancement or that particular feature. And then comes acceptance criteria as to how would you realize in the system to make it happen. So.
All right, great. In your acceptance criteria, is there a specific format that you guys typically write that in, or do you just bullet it out? Or
not. I mean, I like to write my acceptance criteria more as if what are the things that a tester would need to test the application. So not necessarily in terms of test case steps, but so for example, let's say if I'm adding if I'm adding two fields on a page, then first of all I would say what page this fields are displayed. Number two, what are the names of the field? Number three, it's a text box. I'll define it's a text box or a radio button or a checkbox or a drop down, whether they're required fields or not. The content of the field in terms of if it's a drop down, what are the different options in there, the sort order of the options, any default selections or not, and then any validations on submitting the form. And I'll also attach a screenshot or a wireframe, a wireframe along with that, just to have a visual understanding of how it would look like. So.
Okay. What type of software do you use to create your wireframes?
I mean, the old and dirty software, which everyone has, is Visio, which is the last resort. However, I'm also familiar with Azure, and to me, I'm in love with Azure, but not every client has it, right? Because it comes with a cost. Because in Azure,
use that.
Oh, you do? Awesome. Cause
yeah,
you
we
can,
actually
you
have
can...
it. I personally haven't used it that much because I just haven't had the need. The stuff I've been doing, I just use Visio. It's much easier than me just trying to go learn Azure. But I do know that there are teams that utilize that. So
yeah, my biggest reason I love it is I can do annotations in the wireframe. So I could tag my UI requirements along with that, and it gives a number to the UI element along with it spits out a nice table when I generate a report. So it's more like it creates a UI specification rather than just creating a wireframe. So.
Good deal. All right. Let's see. You mentioned UML diagrams. Can you kind of describe your experience with those, which ones you use, and like the purpose for using them?
Right. So I've used mainly three different set of diagrams. First is a use case diagram. So, for example, when I'm having a use case approach, I might want to create an inventory of what are the use cases, who are the actors. It defines that. I might want to show relationships between use cases as to what use case includes which use case, or what is an extension to what use case. So it gives a visual picture. So to me, UML diagrams are more like desserts, which are not needed, but always helpful. So it helps give a better perspective than to the actual requirements. I'm a big fan of activity diagrams, irrespective of what I'm doing. The developers or the business, if I create a flow, the to-be process, it's very easy for them to understand before digging into the details of the actual requirements. Sometimes, depending on what kind of diagram depending on the complexity of a diagram, I might end up creating swim lanes just to segregate different actors or different roles within the diagram. And very rarely at times I felt the need of using a state diagram. For example, if there are different states to an account under different scenarios, I would create an activity diagram to reflect them, just to help the developers and testers understand the difference between different states and what leads one state to the other. So these are the three diagrams I'm familiar with.
All right, this I think will be a simple question for you. So don't feel stumped when I ask you this.
Let's see.
When you are creating an activity diagram, what symbol would you use to indicate like a decision point?
It's called the decision box, right? I mean, in Visio, there's a diamond-shaped box.
Yes, diamond, yeah.
So that's what
I was looking for.
Okay,
Just making a simple question. I don't want. Sometimes I ask that question and people are like, they overthink it.
Oh, okay.
So that's it.
One of the skills of a BA is to keep it simple and stupid. So
we try, but sometimes we don't get it there. Sometimes when we describe things that we think are simple, people read it and be like, "What?" So, okay. Can you describe your most complex project and what made it complex for you?
I would say one of the complex projects I worked on was I was working with that was complex in terms of what happened with Discover is they had different businesses within Discover. I mean, every company has different line of businesses within the main company. However, the thing which made it a little bit complex was each particular team was known as a track, and they would use a certain piece of code or data. So if any changes had to be made, it had to route through them. So, for example, if I'm getting a change, if I have a so if you're creating an application which would display the amount of the total bill amount, outstanding amount, the previous transaction, if I would need to have a new piece of data to be displayed, and if that piece of data is owned by billing team, I need to make sure that I route. Once I get that requirement from the business, I have to route it to the IT team. Now, initially when I joined, the project was in a chaos. I was replacing a BA, and I got quite a few requirements. And someone might have told me initially that this is the route, but I was just overwhelmed in the beginning as to what was going on. And I totally never paid attention, or just a moment of absent-mindedness that I missed. I thought that I just document the requirements and just pass it on to the developers, and there's a one central location where people do the coding. Mm-hmm. Later on, after a few weeks, and after I missed the deadline, I found that wasn't the right approach. And they had a 3-month cycle. They were using a straight waterfall with 3-month cycles. So once I missed the deadline, it means that I would only get that requirement after 3 months. So I had a pretty tough time over there initially because I made a fool of myself, and I'm just thankful to people around that they gave me benefit of doubt. And the next thing I realized is conducting weekly meetings with the leads of all the different tracks just for my project. Initially, I found some resistance in people joining and wasting the 30 minutes out of their 8 hours. But slowly, it's all about creating relationship and letting them know as to what all problems can arise if they miss out on that. So after a few weeks, people understood that, and again, personal relationship helps as well. people started knowing me, and life became much more easier. So I believe tougher projects are more because of indiscipline from one's end, or because of hard people working around, rather than actually requirements being tough themselves. They are never tough. It's just people or the environment that make it tough to realize. So.
Right. All right. That was a good one. I just have one more question before I want to have a couple questions about your resume. There are a lot of BAs out there. I think there's a lot of good BAs out there, but there are certain skills and qualities that you come to expect from an excellent BA.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, how would you describe the skills and qualities that you think an excellent BA has as opposed to just a good BA?
An excellent BA to me is someone who owns the business in terms of, I would say someone as an excellent BA who thinks that I myself am a subject matter expert. Not being arrogant about it, but someone who's accountable to the entire project, or someone who owns the requirements. Versus an average or a good BA, if someone asks a question for which you need to think something, or which is out of the box, they'll say, oh, you know what, it's a good question. Let me go and talk to the SME and get back to you. So they have to do back and forth a few times to get the right answer. Versus an excellent business would understand the bigger picture, would understand what the goals are, and would try to fill in the shoes of SMEs themselves so that they let the SMEs do their work and they can take care of the project and they can own the requirements. Another difference, one more difference, and I'll shut up on this.
No, that's good.
Another difference is someone who's not an excellent BA, someone who's not afraid to say, hey, you know what, I don't know that. Please explain me. Versus an average BA says, you know what, I don't need to know for now. I'll come back to this if the need arises. So.
Okay, good answer. All right, I was looking at your resume. Are you currently working somewhere, or are you?
No, I'm currently looking for a new position.
Okay. I answered that question about functioning as product owner. Let's see what other things I had written on here. Traceability matrix. Can you kind of just describe to me how you manage traceability on projects?
Yep. I love my old and conventional friend, Excel spreadsheet. That's how I manage. That's my only resort. So basically, I do mappings. For example, if I'm getting a BRD which defines the business requirements, I would do a mapping as to, for this business requirements, these are my business rules, these are my functional requirements, these are my UI requirements. And if I'm creating a use cases on top of it, I'm going to tag those rules and requirements to the use cases just to ensure that none of the rules or none of the requirements are orphaned and they're all addressed in the flow of a use case. And then later on, the developers would do their own technical design traceability, and the testers would do their own traceability. But this is what I'll be doing from my end.
Okay. All right. Well, that is all the questions I had. Do you have specific questions for me?
Yes. So the first and the foremost question is, you are a manager of the BA team. You know the clients whom you work with. So looking at my experience and my background, if I'm given an opportunity to work with your team, what are some of the challenges which you think I can face up front in my earlier days or later days, and something which I need to be careful about?
Now, this interview this position is for our partner track application.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an existing application, and you'll be filling in for somebody who's going out on maternity leave, but we also are looking for someone who might be willing to stay on after that,
Okay.
kind of like a contract to hire position.
Mm-hmm.
I am not personally familiar with that project,
Okay.
but from my perspective, I would say since it is an application that has been going, it's been around for a couple of years, I think, one of the hardest things to do is when you join a team is just really getting familiar with the domain knowledge and, learning the team dynamics. So it's kind of like, jumping in where everyone's already been there.
Uh-huh.
So it's just that, getting up to speed on, what's currently going on. And so.
Okay. Another question. Yep,
Mm-hmm.
that answers my question. You asked me about traceability, so I'm always curious because different people or different managers have their own ways of own versions of managing traceability. So what's your idea of traceability in terms of how would you like to manage it in an ideal world?
It's always a tough one, especially in Agile, in my opinion. Back in the waterfall days, it was easier when you did everything up front, and you're like, you have all your requirements and you have your use cases and it's all there. I have a difficult time with it, I'll be honest. I think that's one of the reasons why we're trying to look for like a requirements tool for us, because for me, I actually work on product development, post-production support projects. So a lot of my stuff is already it's been products I've actually been owning for years now. So it's short little user stories. It's very agile for what I'm doing right now, and it's doing little bitty enhancements and little bitty bug fixes. So it's not like huge traceability that I have to worry about because there's such small little pieces that get done each time. So and in Agile, to me it's difficult to manage the traceability.
I was asked this question before in the interview as to how do you manage traceability in Agile, and I said I've never done that. And now when you're talking about it, it makes me realize one thing. So what happens currently with the tool I use is we have features, and in features we come up with user stories. So at the end of the day, the traceability is that all your user stories are delivered to the business, and they're in a complete status, which changes the status of that feature to complete. I think that's about it, right? In Agile,
that's really all I can do, and it's all in TFS. And I have, the epics with, I guess you have this new feature level in there that you can utilize too, and all the PBI is tied to it with all the acceptance criteria. And in my opinion, if that acceptance criteria has been met, you have all your testing tasks, your development tasks. It's all there. And that's. They ask us to ask about the traceability because I personally have never seen in an Agile world, people doing traceability matrix.
Exactly. And I was asked this question beforehand, and I was just shocked. Shocked meaning shocked because I had never done that. So
yeah, I asked because you have it on your resume. You had maintained traceability matrix. So I was curious on.
No. But not in Agile. That's what I meant. So I was asked this question when I had my first screening for this interview. I was asked this question as to how do I manage traceability in Agile, and I said I had no answer to that as to because there's nothing much I can do in Agile. You have features, you have user stories, and sometimes you have an epic which you have 3 to 4 user stories for, and you complete those user stories, and epic gets completed. So okay, I think those were my questions. Anything else I can answer for you?
No, I think that I really enjoyed this interview, Anush. I think you definitely demonstrated your knowledge. So as far as next steps go, I'll be giving my feedback today, and I would expect that they would be setting up a face-to-face in the coming days. All right. Well, I appreciate it. You have a great day.
You too, and have a good weekend.
All right. Thank you.
One day. Bye-bye.
Bye.